Officer Don with the great smelling Ray the DA this morning. What is that high karate that you're wearing? Or Old Spice? Sir?
Oh, it's some manly
It's Axe.
aroma.
It's called Prosecutor's Axe Special Edition. That's fine.
You know, this is weird. I don't know what I'm talking about.
All right, I'm sorry. So what's going on this week?
Well, a number of things are going on, and I want to go through a few of them and just get your comments. For example, you know, in Chicago, they've got a very large Hispanic population up there, and on the south side, it's been reported that some of these Hispanics are emulating the Mexican cartel tactics in setting up fake roadblocks. It's nothing more than a ruse to trap motorists and rob them.
Like they're police, or just that there's a problem up ahead and they put out flares and you stop to slow down, roll down your window, and they stick a gun in your face kind of deal?
That's my guess. That's the report.
In Chicago, Illinois,
Yeah,
the United
yeah.
States of America.
They and the point is that the Mexican cartels from downtown Mexico control much of the illegal trade in Chicago, drug trade in Chicago, and so that's what they're doing. They're bringing their tactics to the United States, and it's of course Chicago, and that wouldn't surprise me given the leadership of our country.
You know, but how can there not be a strong police presence to stop that? I mean, let's think about Lexington, Kentucky. If you set up a roadblock like that, you're going to come across a cop driving through the roadblock pretty soon. I mean, you're not going to be able to stay.
No, somebody's going to report it.
Yes, or the police officer's going to come by. I mean, how can it be so isolated in parts of that city that there's not a police presence that would make them comfortable in doing it?
I don't know. All I'm telling you is it's happening. So there's another in Tennessee. You know, the rape kit controversy
I'm
that's
not familiar
going
with
on.
that, no.
Well, rape kits are, if a person shows up in an emergency room and claims to have been raped, they do an evidence collection process. It's called a rape kit, and they search for semen, they search for bruises. They just do a significant kit. They wrap it up and send it off to the crime lab in that state or in that city. And what they've discovered is that there are, around the country, there are a number of those rape kits that have just languished because they don't have the personnel mostly they don't have the personnel in these crime labs to do so many of these things.
So the purpose, if you don't have a named suspect, you gather the evidence, and it's a way to hold it so that later you can go back and you preserve the evidence.
Well, the point is that there have discovered thousands of these things around the country that have not been examined. Now, in Kentucky, we've done a pretty good job, but we have a number of rape kits in Kentucky that either haven't been sent to the crime lab or have been sent to the crime lab, and there's a backlog because they don't have the personnel, scientific personnel to do it. And once again, that's our legislature has chosen not to fund our crime lab.
You know, whenever cuts are made, like they say they're going to save money putting people in prison, why can't a certain percentage of that be allocated to things like these shoring up these rape kits, crime prevention, law enforcement? Where does that money, the supposed money, go to?
Well, here's the problem, Officer Don. There is no savings.
Yeah.
Because guess what? That was kind of a scam to get people to go ahead and pass this soft on crime catch and release criminal friendly legislation. That all of the savings is going to be reinvested in drug treatment or in these kind of things. Well, unfortunately, guess what? There's just as many people in prison now as when they passed the law, and the savings that they claimed that they were going to have, it turns out to be just baloney.
And, you know, and we talk about this so much because it's so important. But here's what's happening. If you do release one of the 6%ers, the prolific criminals, which 6% of the population commit 80% of the crime, it's been your experience, something like that, it's been your experience that these people don't stop until they're put in prison and kept there, correct?
Yeah.
So if just because you released someone early that you're sent to prison, it's what's going to happen is they're going to come out and recommit. They're going to go before a judge, and they're going to be given some type of probation that's not going to be enforced. They're going to go. So after about the 5th or 6th time, what's ultimately going to happen is they have to put these people back in jail. So there's been no savings because in between, it's the cost of trying to keep these people rounded up. You're shaking your head.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. What's happening with the? First of all, you said it. 5% of the criminals commit between 60 and 80% of the population. In Lexington, the vast majority of crime is property crime. Mm-hmm. And that's, the property criminals are the repeat offenders, you see. And so what happens is repeat offenders, thanks to our wimpy sentencing laws, are probated. Now, those are the ones that commit crime after crime. They're the repeat felony offenders. And they're just put right back on the street. And so what happens is that the only people that are losing in this operation are the new victims of these people who continue to commit these crimes.
And from a police officer's perspective, I'll tell you that if those people are your most prolific criminals, they're going to keep repeating crimes. They're also the hardest to catch. And here's an example. If you told me right now, if you did a reality show, you say, okay, as a former homicide detective, former detective, and I was a burglary detective too. If you said, here's a deal, for $1 million, we're going to give you a crime to solve. And if you solve it, you're going to get $1 million, right? And you gave me a choice. Do I get to solve a burglary or a homicide? I would take the homicide every time. Simply because they are easier to solve. It's much easier to find out who killed someone than it is who broke in randomly into someone's home. So
they probate them, tell them we'll see you later. Just don't do it again. You know, have you been watching this Boston Marathon bombing case at all?
I'm not.
Well, that's not your business anymore. But I pay very close attention. And they've made out, see, there were these two brothers. The oldest brother was killed when he was captured. There was a shootout. Remember, these guys made a bomb in pressure cookers. Mm-hmm. And then blew it up and killed 3 people and injured many, many more. And these two brothers who were Islamic terrorists, one of them, the oldest one, was killed. Now they got the youngest one in there, and the pictures of him indicate that he's just a young guy. But and I've been watching the case, and the prosecution finished their case in a couple of weeks. The defense took 6 hours, is all. And let me tell you, they had the defense attorney, the woman, was asked about what are we going to do in the penalty phase for this guy, because he's facing the death penalty in this thing because of multiple murder, I guess. And here's what she said. What's needed just what she said about her client. What's needed is to humanize the client, to show he's not a monster. That's where we've been aiming. Still, it's not been without trouble, she said. In the months we've been working with Mr. Tsarnaev, it's become clear that he's a narcissistic brat. Not only did he never deny planting the bomb, he's proud of it. He told us that America had it coming for its treatments of Muslims. When his brother broached the idea, he couldn't have been more enthusiastic. He thinks the little 8-year-old boy he blew up was just one more infidel. To make things worse, he was headed toward an arrogant life of white privilege. He was so spoiled, he even wanted to play Little League. Can you imagine that? That's what the defense attorney says in defense of her client. Now, I don't know that that's going to go over well with the jury.
Well, it's not. And what I also see is at some point we're going to see an appeal that he didn't have an adequate defense.
Yeah, well, of course.
You know, and you wonder whether or not that's part of the game. I hate to be that cynical, but she knows better than to talk like that. I mean, that's going to come back to haunt all of us, I think, because you know, that right there, my defense attorney didn't.
He didn't believe me either.
Yeah, and so because you know how those appeals
in
go.
Pennsylvania, guess what? The legislature is considering a bill that would make it a crime to disclose the home addresses of police officers and military personnel. What do you think about that?
The home addresses? Well,
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there have been other bills around the country that say they don't want to release police officers' names that are involved in shootings. You know, I think that public record, you know, that's going to be there at some point. But that's totally appropriate.
Yeah.
There's no reason to be releasing police officers' addresses and military people's. That's
Well, here's something else, by the way. The immigrant gang arrests have declined significantly under Obama and acting Attorney General Eric Holder's policies. Does that surprise you?
Not in the past couple of years, especially. No.
Yeah. So, at any rate, all of this is pretty interesting. Now, what about these spring break shootings? Did you follow that? Okay, so here's the deal. You have become a radio superstar,
Yeah.
and you have forgotten from whence you came. Yeah, you are no longer a crime fighter. You are nothing more than a
This jockey.
hair product, tanned disc jockey.
Yeah, I've been a disc jockey this week. I haven't kept up with your news stories. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm very disappointed in you.
But you were going to talk about the spring break shootings.
Yes, you know, this all of a sudden down there in Panama City, they got some guy ends up shooting 7 people. Just there was a party in his house, and he just opened fire, and 7 of them were shot. And as the police the sheriff down there in Bay County, this is what we've been trying to warn people about: is this drinking and people bringing guns and all of that sort of thing. It's
Well,
I don't know.
We've had some close calls here, not necessarily related to spring break, but I know within the past couple of summers we've had gatherings, and all it takes is one person with a gun to just start shooting, and you wonder how that doesn't happen more often. I mean, it's a blessing that it doesn't, but it can get pretty scary, and especially, in my view, the mindset that for the police to sort of back off now, you know, that's there. I mean, people are feeling that in different communities. If a police officer can't be proactive and feel comfortable approaching someone, if his sixth sense is telling him something's wrong and he sees some things there that doesn't look like, whether it's a bulge in a pocket or someone's mannerisms or behavior, if that police officer can't be trusted to at least make contact with that person and be proactive, we're going to have to wait until the shooting happens before anything can be done.
well, that's what that's what's happening.
Yeah, it is.
You're encouraging. You're discouraging police from proactive.
The bottom line is, you know, police officers feel like, you know, we don't get in trouble for inaction. We get in trouble for the things we do that might result from that. You know, if you don't make contact with somebody, then you really, I mean, and I'm not talking about our community. I'm talking about nationwide. I think our community fights that. But I think nationwide, that is the trend that we're seeing, and we don't need that here any more than we need these shootings in Panama City and all the other stuff, crazy stuff, the roadblocks in Chicago. We got to stay on top of that. We'll see you next week on In Touch.